Good day, my name is Lanisha Valencia, and this is all about vertebral column and thoracic cage. So let me start in the axial skeleton that composed of 28 skulls, 26 in a vertebral column, 25 in a thoracic cage, and 1 unattached bone. And also we have abnormal spinal curvature. The first one is scoliosis. It is a sideways curvature of the spine that most often diagnosed in adolescents. Second is kyphosis. It's like a hunchback or slouching posture. Third is cordyceps. It is a sway back curvature of a lumbar spine just above in the buttocks. We have 7 cervical, which is in the superior end that composed of individual numbers. The first cervical vertebra is atlas or C1 that holds up head or skulls. And it composed of posterior and anterior arc, vertebral foramen, superior articular facet, facet dens, transverse process, and transverse foramen.
Cervical vertebrae. The cervical vertebra has very small bodies except for the atlas, which has no body, because the cervical vertebrae are relatively delicate and have small bodies. Dislocation and fractures are more common in this area than in other regions of the vertebral column. Axis, or C2, is remarkable for its dense or odontoid, tooth-like process. The dens point superiorly through the atlas to act as a pivot for the rotation of C1 and the skull. Cervical vertebrae features: vertebral foramen, large hole for the spinal cord in the center. Spinous process. The spinous process can be seen and felt as a series of projections down the midline of the back. Body. Thick disc of bone at the anterior aspect of the vertebra and forms the anterior arch. Lamina. Thin, plate-like section connecting to the pedicle anteriorly and form which processes project. Intervertebral foramen. Hole formed between body's pedicles and articular process of successive vertebra for spinal nerves. Transverse process. Spine that projects laterally from the posterior arch. Transverse foramen. Hole in a transverse process in a cervical vertebrae only. Articular fossets is flat surface on the superior and inferior articular process. Thoracic vertebrae. The thoracic vertebrae possess long thin spinous processes that are directed inferiorly. The thoracic vertebrae also have extra articular facets on their lateral surface that articulate with the ribs. Lumbar vertebrae have large, thick bodies and heavy rectangular transverse and spinous process. Because the lumbar vertebrae carry a large amount of weight, they have massive bodies.
My reporting for today, it's all about vertebral column thoracic cage. The cervical spine is the neck region of your spinal column or backbone. It consists of your first 7 bones, CL and C7. Other structure in or around your cervical spine are your intervertebral discs, spinal cord, and nerves, muscle, tendons, and ligament. And the thoracic spine is the longest region of the spine, and by some measure, it is also the most complex. And it is connecting with the cervical spine above and the lumbar spine below. The thoracic spine runs from the base of the neck down to the abdomen. It is the only spinal region attached to the rib cage. And the lumbar is an adjective that means of or pertaining to the abdominal segment of the torso between the diaphragm and the sacrum. Sacral vertebra. The 5 sacral vertebrae are fused together to form the sacrum, an upside-down triangular bone that resides at the base of the lumbar spine. And the sacral curve seen on the lateral aspect. Dorsal sacral foramina are opening in the convex posterior surface of the sacrum to which the posterior division of the sacral nerves pass, and the pelvic foramina provides a communication between the perineum of the pelvic and the gluteal region, and the sacral canal is served as a channel at the end of the spinal cord. And the sacral hiatus provide cannular access to the sacral epidural space for administration of causal nerve blocks, and the medial sacral crest serve as the attachment point for the supraspinous ligament, and the sacral promontory articulates superiorly with the L5 vertebral body of the lumbar spine. Superior articular facies is produced synovial fluid to nourish and lubricate the joint, and the posterior tubercle is a rudimentary spinous process and gives attachment to the rectus capitis posterior minor muscle. Oxy is the most interior bone of the vertebral column, known as the tailbone. It also a fusion of several vertebrae, and the hyaloid bone is not part of the vertebral column. The hyaloid bone is a U-shaped bone in the tooth and serves as an attachment for tongue muscle and connective tissue associated with the larynx. Thoracic cage have 25 bones of the rib cage, flexible protecting shield for the heart, lungs, and other organs, and protect some organs of upper abdomen like liver and spleen.
Let's move to the major bone ribs. In vertebrae anatomy, ribs in Latin is called costae, are the long curved bones which form the rib cage part of the ischial skeleton. The rib cage protects the heart, lungs, and other organs on the thorax. In ribs, we have the true 7 pairs, attached directly to the sternum by costal cartilage. In poles, we have 5 pair ribs, not directly connected to the sternum. And the last 2 pairs of false ribs are called rotae. And in sternum or breastbone, any sternum or breastbone receives costal cartilage of 2 ribs, form anterior protective wall over the heart and lungs. Nucleum is to handle as it carries the greatest physical load. Radius or body blade, the middle and largest 3 parts of the sternum. Xiphoid process or tip, the smallest region of the sternum. And now let's move to anatomical images. More recent technology has produced a number of advanced techniques of producing images of human structure. And we have a sample of 2 techniques in lab activity. One is radiography. Radiography is X-ray photography uses radiation in wave. In figure 13, dash 7A shows a radiograph or X-ray photograph of the lumbar region, and we can identify the structures. Number 1 is the body. Body is thick piece of bone of anterior aspect of the vertebra and forms its anterior arcs. Number 2 is a spinous process, spine projecting posteriorly from the junction of the lamina. Number 3 is the inferior intervertebral foramen, hole between bodies, pedicle and articular process or successive vertebra for spine. Number 4 is the transfer process, spine that projects laterally from the posterior arch. Number 5 is the inferior articular reset, flat surface on the inferior articular process. Second is CT scan. CT scan is computed tomography, emits beam of X-rays in circular path around the subject. In figure 13-7B shows a CT image of a horizontal section of the upper abdomen. Vertebra is clearly shown and can be identified with spots. Number 6 is vertebral, projects from the body and connects to lamina. Number 7 is transverse process spine that projects laterally from the posterior arch. And number 8 is lamina, inflate-like section connecting to the pedicle anteriorly and from which process project. Number 9 is spinous process and 10 is band. 84 is
By the bones of the cervical column of adult, we have 26 in the vertebral column and 7 in the cervical vertebra.
Thoracic vertebrae have 12 bones. Lumbar vertebrae have 5 bones.
Curves have 33 individual bones, and the thoracic cage have 12 thoracic vertebrae. And in humans, there are normally 12 pairs of ribs.
pair of true ribs are 7, pair of false ribs are 3, pair of floating ribs are 2.
The first cervical vertebra is called C1 or atlas. The second cervical vertebra is called C2 or axis. The inward curve of the lower back is called lumbar curve. All the ribs articulate with the thoracic vertebra. In both radiographs and CT scans use radiation to form image of anatomical structures.
Number 6. Kyphosis is condition in which the vertebral column is distorted, giving a person a humpback. This condition involves an exaggerated thoracic curve. Number 7. Both the coccyx and sacrum are vertebral bones that are actually fused vertebrae. Number 8. The thoracic vertebrae are superior to the lumbar vertebrae. Number 9. The superior portion of the sternum is called manubrium. Number 10. The only bone that does not articulate with another bone is the hyoid bone.
Coraconid is vertebral tunnel through the sacrum for the passage of nerve descending from the spinal cord. The medial bump along the midline of your back are caused by the spinous process of each vertebra. The flosion ribs do not articulate even indirectly with the sternum. The true ribs connect directly to the sternum. Costal cartilage are composed of hyaline cartilage tissue.
Fill in number 16. Blank disc appearing in figure 13-2 form a type of joint between the bodies of vertebrae. The answer is intervertebral. Number 17. The blank is a horseshoe-shaped bone. The answer is hyoid. Number 18. The tailbone is more properly known as the blank. The answer is coccyx. Number 19. Spinal nerve lead the protection of the vertebral column by way of lateral holes or gaps between the vertebrae called the blank foramina. The answer is intervertebral. And last, number 20, the medial ridge along the posterior surface of the sacrum is called the blank. The answer is medial sacral crest.